Hey everyone, my name is Leslie. Welcome to my channel, BOOKSGURRSandPurrs. I'm so sorry I'm getting 4 minutes behind trying to get my act together over here. Today we're going to be discussing The Emperor and the Endless Palace by Justinian Huang. And so I'm just going to read the synopsis for you from Barnes & Noble. In the year 4 BCE, an ambitious courtier is called upon to seduce the young emperor, but quickly discovers they are both ruled by blood, sex, and intrigue. In 1740, a lonely innkeeper agrees to help a mysterious visitor procure a rare medicine, only to unleash an otherworldly terror inside. And in present-day Los Angeles, a college student meets a beautiful stranger and cannot shake the feeling they've met before. Across these seemingly unrelated timelines, woven together only by the twists and turns of fate, two men are reborn, lifetime after lifetime, within the treacherous walls of the ancient palace and the boundless forest of the Asian wilderness, to the heart-pounding cement floors of underground rave scenes. Our lovers are inaccessibly drawn to each other, constantly tested by the worlds around them. And here to discuss this with me today is a lovely Shannon S.D. Huston. Let's see if I can add this to stage.
Hello.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for being here. Would you mind letting everyone know about your channel and what you have going on?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon. I write under the pen name of S.D. Huston, a fantasy romance author with a Kickstarter that's actually coming out next month on my next book in my series. I'm looking forward to that. But on my channel, I also talk about writing and self-publishing, and I do weekly writing sprints. I'm also the founder and conference chair of the AuthorTube Writing Conference, which is a free conference we put on every year. And we actually have our first live stream this coming Friday to announce the dates for next year's conference in June. So we'll have that if anybody's interested in speaking at the conference. And to be qualified, just have a YouTube channel where you talk about writing and or publishing. And it doesn't matter which field. You could be traditional or self-publishing. It doesn't matter, or hybrid. Also part of the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast with Ben Pick and Morgan Lee. And I feel like there's something I'm missing, but yeah, that's me.
Oh my gosh, you have so much going on. Thank you for carving out time because I know you're busy.
I didn't finish reading this book until today. So
that's, oh my, it's so funny that you said that because this is the first time I actually was like ahead of schedule in reading. The last book I covered, I was reading till like the morning of. It was bad. So yeah, thank you. So with that said, would you mind giving like a non-spoiler review, your thoughts of the book?
My thoughts. I loved, okay, so when I first heard you talking about this, I heard you talking about the book. And the way, I think you gave something of the blurb from the back of the book, the description. I was like, oh, that's my jam. It's romantasy. It's, and I like the idea of different timelines and the intersection and, souls finding each other over these different timelines. And I always want to learn more about Asian mythologies and stuff like that, and the magic systems that they have. I always think that's really interesting. So when you said it, I was like, oh, this is what I want. And I thought that's what I would like. And I would say up to about just past the 50% mark, I was like, okay, this is okay. It is not a romance story. So I was disappointed by the end of the book. I was like, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be. And I think that if I had known what it actually was, I probably would not have read it because it's kind of outside my norm to read this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're looking for something that is, it does pull the heartstrings. There is some beautiful passages as far as like descriptions and stuff. Does a really good job. I felt the writer did much better in the older settings, like the way he brought the language forward in the older settings. I thought that, but that could also be me because he also, one of the timelines is in present day. I don't really like contemporary writing, so I think it's boring. And so it could be me. That's my influence. But I felt like he shined more with the other two timelines that were in older settings.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad to hear your take. I enjoyed all of it. Like where it went was unexpected. Mm-hmm. And it's such a weird thing to say, unexpected, because I'm not really a gushy person, but sometimes I think in this book, I think I wanted something gushy. The only timeline I found myself like losing interest in was the 1740s about the fox spirit and the Huston. I kind of throughout kind of like lost interest and
Yeah.
until it started to come together, then I was interested. But the other two timelines I enjoyed. So, and I also do really I guess when I first picked it up, I think I felt a little bit like intimidated because there's three storylines and I didn't know how the author was going to handle it. But I found it pleasantly surprising, like how easy it was because the author only jumps into like one timeline per chapter
Yeah.
and rotates. And I thought that was a great way to like handle the structure of all these intermingling storylines. And then as the story goes on, the stories they start to echo each other a little bit to kind of close them in. And I thought that was really done really well because there's basically no intermingling within the chapters, which I liked because I think that would have confused me, to be honest. So I like how that was handled. What would be your star rating?
It'd probably be a 2.
Oh,
Because
really?
every book has a question, a main question. And my main question, what I got from the beginning of this book, which by the time I got to the end, it wasn't answered, is what's bringing these souls together over and over again? We learn there's a curse. We learn that it's supposed to be broken, that one of them is trying to find a way to break the curse. But why is it a curse? Who did the curse? How did the curse happen? And why was it not broken? So I could have been okay with it not breaking and having that the ending that it had. But the main question is what's bringing these souls together over time? And I think that from the blurb, it's trying to tell you it's love, which I do get from the first timeline that there was a bit of a romance built up between them. But in none of the other timelines was ever love. It was lust to me. So it did not build the romance at all. And so I'm like, well, what's really bringing them back together over and over again?
Oh, I like that. I really love your take. For me, it was 4 to 5, but I didn't go in with any expectations. But everything you said is completely valid. I'm like, yeah, that's all true.
And my expectations was because I am a fantasy romance writer, and it's all coming under the umbrella of romantasy because that's what readers understand. But there is definitely a difference between romantasy and fantasy romance. But in both of them, there are specific things that have to be met by readers' expectations that was not met, which is a happily ever after. That has to be in there. And that's the biggest expectation. Then there's some other expectations that I've kind of seen broken kind of here and there. And a book still kind of works, which is there's no cheating. There's no, if there is like some type of, there's SA. If that happens to one of the characters, then there's some working through it. That's what the romance stories do. They work through it as the partners come together, like the actual romantic pair come together to work through that. And none of that was in the book at all. So, and there was some essay in the book, which I'm okay with. But when I have the expectation of a romantasy book, I went in looking for those things that echo what I know of the genre, and it didn't at all.
Yeah. I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm getting so sucked into everything you're saying. I'm like, where am I going with this? Before we continue, I'm just going to say hi to everyone. Catch up on the chat. Hi, Andy. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, I appreciate you. Hey, Rita. Yeah, I'm excited too. Again, thank you, Shannon. I mean, because you're like this fantasy writer, I was like, oh my gosh, you're such an expert. This is like the perfect book to read with you.
I do read a lot of fantasy romance, and if I don't read fantasy romance, I'm reading romance. So I'm very, very familiar with those genres.
Yeah, you're really well-versed.
Yeah, I wish it would have been marketed differently, to be honest. I wish it wasn't stated as a romantasy because that did set up certain expectations that didn't happen. And I think that's why it kind of suffered, because if I had known something different about it, if it was marketed in a different way, maybe I wouldn't have had those expectations let down and I wouldn't feel the way I do about it. But there is still that one question that it did not get answered, which is what keeps bringing them together.
Yeah. Rita, new subby. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a journey. Thank you, Shannon, for saying hi to everyone while I was running around. And then I got to it.
I was just letting everyone know that we were getting there.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy, for your excitement. Your scribe, thank you. Hey, it happens. Rita, We're just all catching up. Yeah, I slowly got my act together this morning. Where to find buddies? Andy, you're stuck with us. We're your buddies.
I don't know how we got connected. Was it through Margaret?
Yeah, we did one of her segments together, and then I had a night where I had so much energy suddenly, and I got the idea to maybe reach out to some people to buddy read. So I try to reach out to everyone like in advance.
Yeah.
Even though it seems like way ahead of time, I'd rather do that because like you're really busy. So it's not like I'd ask for like, I don't even think a month is enough time. I have to give you anyway. So yeah, that was kind of an idea. And you just seem so lovely and very sweet and accessible. And I like your morning sprints. So yeah, I thought I would reach out to you.
Yeah. I mean, I like the book. Overall, I do like it. Like,
yeah.
There's some really, just the language, the way he does language sometimes was really, really well done. I can't remember what the line was because it was like something about it was about a hill basically that this palace was, or something was sitting on the hill. I think it was the temple on the hill, and the way he described the hill as an emerald something or other. And I was like, I never would have described it like that, but that's perfect because that put the image in my mind of what that was supposed to be without saying a green hill or a hill with
yeah.
So
yeah, the phrasing was like really beautiful. What's all that about? Yeah, I know. I don't know what got into me. I had like a 2-day fever of just street, like honestly, insomnia, where I was like, I have an idea. And like when I get into an idea, I get into like a fever dream. And I was like contacting so many people. I'm like, I got to get this done.
I mean, it's a hard line because like if you do it, and we've learned this with like the conference, right? If you get in touch with people too soon, you're like, hey, would you want to do this? And they say, yeah, I would love to do that. And then you wait until you get closer to date to like, okay, make sure this is still good, right? And like, oh no, now I've already booked it up. I forgot about it. So there's like that line of how far out's too far and how close is too close, to set things up.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I'm gonna try to. I think I might hit into some spoilers, so I'm just gonna put the little spoiler thingy, just so everyone knows, and then I'll mark it later for after. I have some facts here. So I watched some interviews with the author.
I did too. I watched one on YouTube,
and it was some fun facts. One is that the time period that takes place in the Han Dynasty with the emperor and Dongxian that's like the story came from historical fact. Yeah. And then the fox spirit and Hsien in 1740s is from an actual a real life fable that exists, and then they expanded on it. So when it comes to world building and historical fact, how do you know when to add and then when to pull away and trust the reader?
So I did not know going into it that these were a story and historical facts. I do remember you talking about the fox, well, that's a kitsune, which I've been trying to read more kitsune fables and stuff. And so when it was in there and it talked about how most kitsunes or spirits were female, I was like, well, that's not my experience in reading the tales, but the tales I'm reading are those that current authors are creating. And so I was like, so it's like, this is kind of like a role reversal. I didn't know if that was, so in that one, I'm like, does the author, I'm sure the author probably knows that, yeah, okay, maybe most kitsunes are female. I don't know. That was just not been my experience with reading, but I thought, okay, well, I'll trust it. And I went on with it. But I wanted more of the kitsune. I wanted more of the magic. I wanted more of that. I want to learn more about how he portrayed the kitsune in the story. I'd say my favorite was probably the one on 4 BC. And it did make me, when I found out, because I saw one of the interviews and I found out it was from actual history, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go check this out. And I read about it. Man, the history is confusing. There's like so many different things there. I'm like, okay, well, I can see where it came from. But I thought he did fine overall with it, because I don't know. I think that's kind of a hard line to decide how much you put in there. What was it? I just read something that had a lot of historical stuff in it. I don't even remember. What did I just read? And no, it wasn't read. I watched something. I don't know. I have to think about it before. But and then she had included a lot of the writer of the script had included a lot of historical stuff that I didn't know. So I was like, oh, well, got a little history too at the same time. I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I didn't.
No. I guess I was thinking, or also maybe I'm not really good at like, I guess I just felt like there's a couple of books that I've read recently that have been fantasy that I really like the world building. And it's, I guess you could say, woven into the narrative seamlessly. And I think he did a good job with that.
Yeah.
But then there was like a science fiction book that I read, and I was kind of like, I did like the book, but I was a little bit disappointed in because I felt like the author was, instead of weaving into the world building into the story, they're kind of just info dumping. And so I just feel like, gosh, it's got to be so hard, I guess, because I'm just a reader, not a writer. So it's like, I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, how's that line? How do you make up something for yourself as a writer that you know is information you need to convey, but not make it sound like it's an info dump? And it's just like, it's got to be so hard. I don't know how you handle that in your own writing.
It's a difficult process because even audiences change over time. If you read a fantasy novel from the 80s, you're going to have tons and tons of world building. And most of these were the writers were influenced by J.R.R. Tolkien. So there's tons of world building, a couple pages of like fashions and foods and, you know, what everything looks like. And today readers don't really want that. And I used to do a lot of that world building, but over time, you know, and I have my master's in writing. And so in my master's program, I had one mentor. She was like, let's like pare this down. Let's keep what's important for the world building for the reader to understand. So I felt like I got better with it. But even like my last like novel that I published, A Curse of Scales and Feathers, I went through 2 different sets of readers. And so I was trying to only reveal world building when it was needed. And my first set of readers were like, I don't know enough about this, this, and this. And they almost all said the same thing. So I was like, okay. So I added to my novel started at 117,000 words and ended at 142. When it went to the next set, they also said, I'm missing this, this, and this, and this. I want this. And a lot again was the same. So I added more to it. And when I published it, I still have, I would say that the majority of the reviews that talk about world building, they want more. So but I do have a couple of reviews who said too much world building. So I'm like, what are you supposed to do with this?
Yeah. At some point you have to make the decision and let it go, right?
Yep.
That's so what. Yeah, that's what I was like. Anyways, yeah. So that's just kind of like a question that's been on my mind ever since I read that particular science fiction book. Because it's like, yeah, how do you know how to toe the line and like trust the reader to pick up that breadcrumbs and like run with it versus not enough? And it's just like, it's such a.
It reminds me of when I used to teach. They would say you would have, you know, I say they, I'm talking about like my mentors when I was teaching, who were teaching for years before I came on. And I taught college English and literature. And then they would tell me, you have to repeat things 3 times in pretty quick succession for your students to remember it. So like if you really want them to know a piece of information, give it to them 3 times. It doesn't have to be the same way you give it to them. It could be a picture and then you say it and then you give them something written. And it's so 3 times before they understand it. So that's the idea too. I think that kind of goes into writing, that sometimes you have to kind of say things a couple times for the reader to pick up all those little details. But then you do have those readers who don't need that 3 times. They don't need those 3 times. And then you'll get the review that says, I don't need to be hit over the head with this. So it's just such a fine line of like what works. And I think he did fine. I think the author of this, as far as the world building, I think there was enough. There was just enough for me to understand it and not too much where I got bored with it. That's the way I feel about it anyways. But it may not be takes away.
So early on, at the beginning of learning about Dongxian, right? He has a stutter and bouts of insomnia, but that leads to his literary knowledge. Is there any way that you could relate to his experience?
Well, I mean, my son stutters and my husband stutters, but my husband, he had lots and lots of help with speech therapy that he was able to get over most of stuttering. You wouldn't even know he stutters most of the time. It's just when he has like high emotions and it comes out. But my son stutters and he's had years and years of speech therapy and it still hasn't got better. And he loves to read. And we used to have him read things out loud all the time. And we actually just did a whole book on Thursday, but it hasn't helped his stuttering at all. And I'm like, well, I'm glad that worked for you. It doesn't work for my kid. So, but I do remember thinking that the difference would be that the main character, Dongxing, he had the drive to drive out that stuttering. That was his personal motivation behind what he did. Whereas with my son, it's our motivation to help him get past it, but he may not really care about it.
Yeah. I think
So,
I like the idea of something that people perceive as a weakness it's more nuanced and complicated than that. And that thing could also be a strength, you know? I don't
mhm.
mean strength as in to take out that like there's a challenge there, you know. But I definitely felt like uh a connection. I don't have a stuttering issue, but I do like have like insomnia on and off.
Mm.
But I just try to use that and be like, well, if I'm up, let me get something done. It probably won't make sense to anybody else functioning in the world. Everybody's asleep. But that's just kind of like what works for me. I'm gonna catch up on the chat really quick. I just realized I kind
They're talking about shrooms,
of yeah.
which made me think of the book because there's lots of drugs in the book. So.
Yeah. Andy, I seldom get invites. Hey, you know what? Be careful what you wish for, Andy.
He's getting
Mushroom coffee.
into thriller writing, so if you have any thriller books coming up, you might want to read
Yeah,
some
that's
of
what I'll
them.
do. I'll definitely. This year, I decided to challenge myself to one romance a month. I'm not doing that next year. I'm gonna do like quarterly and like space it out because it's a lot. Which tea? I don't know if I believe Andy, but okay. I guess so silly. Okay, I did have a I think I have a question. I think I have an answer too as I was writing it, but I still wanted to ask. So in present day, River, we're barely getting to know River, and right off the bat, he catches his mom having an affair,
Hmm.
and his dad's sick. Uh, what was the point of that? Was that meant to be like allude to like what happens with the past lives?
I, I wondered about it too because it felt like it came too late. Like it should have been in a previous life, but then you
Okay.
find out at the very end, of course, in the very first life, he cheats. So,
Yeah, there's a
mm,
lot of rearranging. Like for instance, River in present day is trying to be a doctor, but then like in the 1740s, there's a character that is a doctor. So it's not always like the same character, but there's kind of like this intermingling.
well, and the one that was trying to be a doctor in 1740. So I remember making this prediction to my husband. I said, "There's three timelines. There's three main characters." I said, "I think they're all the same guy." But we do find out that River is not the same as the other two timelines. That the other two point of views, he is actually the other half of the romance couple. So
Yeah, which is what, yeah, I'm definitely gonna get to that. But yeah, I just thought, I guess the mom having an affair, it felt a little bit out of place. Like I didn't know what the point
maybe
was.
it was the author's way to prep us that
Yeah.
cheating was on the horizon.
Yeah.
Um, but when I first read it, I was confused by it because it's not what you would find in a romance. But I thought, okay, well, maybe the author is going to use this to show how River is going to remain faithful to his partner. So,
That's very interesting.
yeah.
Um, when Calvin suggests, oh, okay, this is just like some. I have some random thoughts. Okay, when Calvin, who's kind of like a secondary character in the present day storyline, he makes an assumption that maybe because they're trying to figure out who is Joey,
Mhm.
that Joey might be a prostitute, and my mind just wanders. So when I heard that, I was thinking of, I was like picturing Pretty Women. I don't know why. It was the wrong assumption, anyways. I don't know where my brain went there. But there's something about this book that has like a cinematic quality to it. When reading the book, were there any other like cinematic references that came to mind when you were reading this?
I don't really spend a lot of time on TV.
Oh, okay,
So,
that's good.
I mean, that I will take a time sometimes when at night I'll go ahead and watch things with my husband. Um, but I don't I'm very bad with names. I don't remember TV shows. This was I know I just watched a TV show, fantasy. It was based on some historical stuff. I can't remember what it was I saw. So, although we did just start, and that we can't continue at the moment because I'm trying to get my next book done, and so I'm not taking evenings off right now. But we just started the Vampire, no, not Vampire Diaries, the one that you did all your videos on. Although I've not watched your second season once because I don't want to be spoiled. But I watched the first
Interview the Vampire?
Interview with the Vampire, or the Vampire. So I watched all the first season, and I was watching your videos as I was watching the first season. And then I know you had your videos come out for the second season, and I was just like, well, I'm not watching those because I don't have the second season yet. So, but yeah, so I don't really remember shows very well.
Oh, that's all right. That's just like my wandering mind goes all over the place.
Yeah. I'll tend to make connections to just like stories that I know already. So when it was like the 1740s and I knew this was a kitsune, I was referencing it to a series I read last year that I don't remember the name to either, but I can remember parts of the story, and it was a love story. So it was really cool. But he was a male kitsune, and it was a female priest, and so, or priestess, but it had a different name. But I just kept going back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool Gamer, thank you for being here.
Hi, Cool Gamer. Andy, I'm really bad with names too. That's why I call it SD Lady 1N. Why? Because you can't remember my name.
So funny.
I mean, to remember 1N, because that was my call sign that was given to me by the Marine Corps when I was working for them as a civilian, and I worked in the Department of Aviation, so they had call signs. And people would email me, and I'd email them back, and I was like, by the way, it's just Shannon with 1N. And so then they said, well, that's your call sign. You're 1N. Like, if you can remember 1N, you have to know how to spell my name.
Handy. All right. There's an element here of unrequited love to some extent. Out of all the characters, I'm actually really liked Calvin.
Me too.
Who was the character from the present day
Yeah.
timeline where the focus is River and Joey. I love that Calvin sets a standard for himself, and I think, did I mark it? I may have marked it, but he says something about not wanting to be, that if he's in his own love story, he wants to be the main character, right? And so it's a little bit like self-referential, but in a way that I enjoyed in this book. He sets a standard, but then he decides to go to Asia with River. Do you agree with his choice to do that?
No. So I like the idea that Calvin knew that he loved River, and that River, with River not, returning his love, that Calvin, steps back and says, okay, fine. I'm not gonna waste my time with this. But then him coming back into it, I was like, why are you wasting your time with this? So, but I did like it because it was in that when he went to China with him. I don't remember exactly the conversation, but I know that River was happy, told him that he was happy that he came with him, so he wasn't alone. And he says, well, that's what love is. And I thought that is like right there. Why did the author not pick up on that right there? Because he said it himself. He wrote that line, because this is not a love story. None of this is a love story.
I love your opinions, and I love like how strong you feel about it. I love it. And yeah, I even like that in that moment. So we have that kind of like I guess, what do you call it? I don't know if it's self-referential or meta, right? He's a secondary character and says he wants to be the main character in his own love story. And then when he goes to Asia and decides to go, he says something like, well, at least maybe I'll be a plot twist. And I like that too, but I really wasn't reading this book with actively trying to solve anything. So I think those little moments, I enjoyed them. And so I just wish I'll go there now. I don't know. I can't tell if I want this or not. With the way that it all came together at the end, I almost wish we had a glimmer of knowing that maybe he would have considered pursuing Calvin when he left.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I did get the feeling which I wish that the whole curse, the idea of the curse hadn't been introduced, because I would have been okay if it was like, for some reason, they were just drawn to each other over time. And it was just the fact that they did love each other in their first life, but it ended poorly. That's why they kept trying to come back together and make it work and make it work. And if the author had gone down that line, and this still wouldn't be romance, but if the author had gone down that line, never introduced a curse and just said that these souls kept finding each other so they could try it again to make it work. And to the point where, like, in the second timeline, the character who was the emperor in the first one let the other guy die because he wanted to keep him with him as much as possible. And even though he was telling you, you're dying, you need to leave and go eat something, he was like, no, I can't leave you. And then him to come to a realization that they were just bad for each other, and that's why he walked away at the end. And then that would have given me, okay, they kept finding each other because they're trying to figure out how to make this work. But the end, the emperor is the one who figures out this is never going to work, and I need to just leave it. I would have been fine with that storyline. That would have made the book to me really much better and stronger. The introduction of the curse, which would never went anywhere, kind of threw it for me. So
yeah.
If it wasn't for that part, this would be like a 4 or 5 star book for me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Let me see. Okay, so I'm looking at my notes. So surprise, surprise, Joey tells River he was a fox spirit and the emperor, right? Yeah. Was there any indication to you which character was which in the past?
I mean, I thought they were all, so Dongxing, I thought he would, that he was Huston and River. So when we found out that he was actually Joey and not River, then I was surprised. So,
yeah, I think
it made more sense though, because Joey had the guy, what was his name? The Winston or something, whatever his name was.
Yeah.
He had that guy hanging on him all the time and, ruling his life, where that was in the first storyline where the commander was always going after Dongxing, and of course, then the final scene with them and the cheating. So it made sense afterward. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I understand this.
Yeah, I almost feel like I think this may have been a breadcrumb and I didn't see it and I should have. But again, I wasn't really reading it trying to predict anything. But the fact that River grew up in the Palisades, and the Palisades is like a real rich area. So I kind of think that should have been, and it's in California. So I'm in California. So that I feel like that should have tipped me off that his character would end up being the emperor. Because once we find out that he was that past life, I was annoyed with myself. I was like, of course he is. He's in the Palisades.
I would have never made that connection, but I'm not familiar really with
Yeah. But I mean, it went over my head too, So it was just like a little breadcrumb. But I did find that interesting who was who. Let me see. I'm gonna go back. I have like so many notes. I have like 2 pages of notes. So there's another fun fact. When the author was writing the Han Dynasty, the 4 BCE segment, they were listening to a soundtrack. It's a movie I haven't seen yet, but it's called Lust, Caution.
Yeah.
So I'm going to want to check that out. And when he was writing the 1740s, Hsien.
Well, I listened to the audiobook and I wrote down it was Huston.
Yeah. And
he, but
okay. He was listening to Twilight soundtrack.
I didn't even pick any of that up. I have seen Twilight, but I haven't seen the other one.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, it's not like written in there, but it was just like a little fun fact that I enjoyed. And then in the present day, when the author was writing the present day, he was listening to just a variety of current music. When you were reading the book, was there any music that came to mind to you?
No.
For me, what was it? I made a note.
I mean, they go to a couple of raves, so I'm hearing rave music in those scenes.
Yeah.
But I mean, those are my least favorite. The present timeline was my least favorite. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. You're like not into that. So at some point, as that the author uses that technique where, like, as we get closer to the end of the book, there's this like mirroring when one book ends a certain way and they kind of like echo each other to the next chapter. Within 3 storylines, so page 253, 261, 254, the characters at some point say to each other, "Say my name." So that's "say my name, say my name, say my name." So that made me think of that Beyonce song. Or yeah. Destiny's Child.
About that. The line that was echoed for me, and I do remember him saying name, but in the first timeline, Don Shin, he says Lu Xin's name first, and the emperor's like, "What'd you say?" And then he says his name again. And then later on he says, "Say my name," and then he says in the other one. So I didn't pick that one up as much, but what I heard echoed over and over again was, the moment that they were consummating their sexual stuff on the page, he says, "Don't close your eyes." And he said that to the emperor in all 3 timelines. "Don't close your eyes. Look at me." So
I'm gonna go back. I do remember one, but I'm gonna go back. That's so interesting. I love the echoing, but I have a wild mind, so my mind just goes there. I'll start like thinking about other things. There's also something, but I know you said that you don't really watch television too much, but going on to like the explicit scenes, there's a moment between like River. Actually, I should talk about both of these. I'll talk about both of these. When River and Joey like have their first love scene or whatnot, the way that's written kind of reminded me of when I was watching. Did you ever watch Bridgerton?
Yeah, I did. I watched all of it, and the spinoff too. I liked Bridgerton.
Yeah, Charlotte is incredible.
Yes, Charlotte. I love the Charlotte. And technically, Charlotte would not be considered romance, and that's probably why the author didn't write those books, although she did write or had input on the script on that one. But yeah, because it's technically not romance because it doesn't have a happily ever after, where Bridgerton has happily ever afters. So
yeah, something about like I think what the characters are saying to each other, Joey and River, reminded me of like Kate and Anthony's scene. I think they say something kind of about like "don't stop." There's just like this like echoing of language again that my mind just kind of went there. I don't know why. That's not even a question. That just like popped into my head. And then I do have something else about that. I'll probably have to go back to it because my questions are all over the place.
Yeah, this is a raunchy book, Andy. It actually opens. So the first 10 pages, there's 3 scenes on page.
Yeah, usually I keep my conversation for explicit stuff at the end, but it's kind of hard to with this book because it's like all scattered all over the place. So let me go back. Sorry. Oh, you know what? Let me not. How much do you guys want me to talk about the explicit scenes? Because I don't know.
Whatever you want to say.
So basically, I've been reading a romance once a month, basically, and I'm trying to not actually look too much into the book because I just want to experience it and be surprised or whatnot.
Yeah.
Some of the books are like, I guess you could say like what they're talking about is a little bit too much for me. So then I feel like, am I vanilla? I don't understand what's going on here. But other books I'm fine with. This book, I think the writing was done so well that like some things work for me that I was like shocked by. I'm like, what's wrong with me here? Okay, I'll say it. The moment, I'm just gonna like be cryptic because Andy hasn't read this. Although the framing of the situation is wrong, the way that he wrote about the razor blade, I'll just say that.
Oh, yes. I was like, that's interesting. I was like, did he take that from history? I was wondering if that was a historical thing, if he read that in that time period, like they did things. I can imagine that probably happened. Andy, you do not want to know what the razor blade scene is.
Hey, and you don't want to. I will say that I was like, what's wrong with me? Because I actually found it hot, but I know that's not everyone's reaction to this. Some people are like, especially if someone's like, male, they're like, this is. Yeah. So I don't know what you thought about that, but I was like, this is hot.
I don't typically find male romance in books to be hot. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't do anything for me. I found it very intriguing. Like as a sexual act, it was very, very intriguing to have that in there. But yeah, I don't know. He did write all of his scenes. That means some of them were very in depth with the character development, and and that's how I actually preferred my love scenes, is that there's more development between the sexual partners and their character development and their relationship development, which I felt was there for the first timeline, but it was not in the other timelines.
Yeah. No. That's a good
But
point.
I thought that was very interesting what he wrote about. And I felt like that must be something that's happened. It's probably happened. It was probably written down that happened somewhere in history somewhere.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's shocking. And I'm like, in any other book and any other writer, if it's not handled right, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But for some
Yeah,
reason, it doesn't work. And I was like surprised by that. And also, this isn't even a question. I just like the fact that the cat is named Meowmy.
But once the cat led him to the office, a secret office, then you never heard from the cat again. And the cat's on the cover. And I'm like, I want the cat. I want the cat back.
Yeah. You're like, what was the point?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, plot device.
yeah. That's all it was just a plot device to get him to that office. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the cover has a lot of the symbolism from the story itself. You got the kitsune on there. I mean, you got the robe. I mean, I keep wanting to say that's a peach, but I'm like, why is there a peach? It should be a plum. Because there's no biting of peaches in this story. Lots of plums. But, yeah. So anyways, yeah. But yeah, that I was like, why is the kitty? I want more kitty in there. I mean, the peach also had its symbolism, because the peach and the plum was part of that one poem that he read, or that he recited for the emperor, right? There was a poem. I think of it. There was a poem. And the whole him, reciting these poems from memory, because that's what he did to get over his stuttering, and that was building the romance between the two of them. And so that's where it had a lot more significance to me.
Yeah. Just checking my notes. Okay, so let's talk about the end. What do you think about River's decision at the end?
I think, yeah, it's what should have happened. I just wish, again, like I said, the curse. So River walks away. There's Joey, who is Dongxing or Hashishin from the other two timelines. River is the emperor from the first timeline, and the kitsune from the second timeline. And in the second timeline, he is a kitsune because he died and he went to heaven, and he was so mad over everything that happened, because in the first timeline, Dongxing cheats on him, which you're never shown him finding out about it, about him finding out, but you get the idea that he knew about it. And that's why when he died, he was upset and became the kitsune, and he was so enraged, and he wanted that, so he went from loving this guy to being enraged and finding out about him cheating on him and becoming this spiritual being with lots of power so he can get his revenge, to him realizing that he really loves this man. But then the man dies, giving him all his love, he literally starves himself to death, to him getting to the next timeline. And again, here he is with this guy, the guy he cheated with. There he is with that guy again. And he's realizing this is a cycle. So I felt like that's what should have been played up. But I feel like that's what was happening in his head. It was not on the page. But that was like a cycle that he was like, I'm done with this. And I just wish that would have been more on the page and the curse just taken out. If it was like more explicit that that's what the author was going for, that he's like looking at this like we are toxic for each other, and he walks away because of that. It's not really said why he walks away, other than it doesn't make sense to him at that point. So he walks away. Anyway, that's what I got from it.
Yeah. That basically River makes his decision based on past lives, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than what's going on in the moment. Well, also he does kind of learn that he's what's his name? Joey loves Winston still. But
it brought it back, and that was an echo. That last scene where there was the three of them in the scene, well, Winston's behind him, right, holding his hand or his wrist or something. And that last scene, and he's like, yes, I did love Winston. Yes, I do love Winston. I think he said, I love Winston. And then he says, but you lied to me. You lied to me. You told me you didn't love him. He said, I don't love him now. But when he said, you lied to me, that's the same thing he said to him in the first timeline, when he lied about the reason why he knew all these poems was because of, I don't remember what lie he gave, but he knew the poems because he stuttered. But he didn't want to tell the emperor that was why, because it was shameful to him. So he didn't want to reveal his shame. And in the last timeline, that last scene with all three of them together, he says, I didn't want to reveal my shame. So it was another echo of that other timeline again.
Yeah. I like the echoing a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, so on page 34, when River meets Joey, he says, I don't know how else to describe this bittersweet feeling inside me. In this moment that I meet him, I realize I might be lonely for the rest of my life. And at the end, when River sees Joey in the rearview mirror, he says he was right, that River was right about when he first met him. Now that I know he is out there, I might be lonely for the rest of my life. I feel like you already answered this, so I'm going to ask, with all that said, I did like how that like came full circle. I thought that was really beautiful and really is bittersweet. Do you think the ending felt like too open-ended, or did you feel like satisfied in the way that the author ended it?
It goes back to the fact that the main question was not answered. The author introduced the curse and didn't answer the question of what was this curse? What that was not the main answer is, or the main question is, what kept bringing these guys back together again? And he gives an answer in sort of saying that it was that they were under the curse. But then again, we don't know why the curse was there, how it happened. And then to take it further, is it just these two guys? Because Winston, I feel Winston was the commander in the first timeline, you know, so it wasn't just them two, it was other people involved.
Yeah.
So, but then without getting the specifics of the curse, we don't know what's actually drawing these guys together over every timeline. So
yeah,
I felt like it was the right ending. I just wanted it. I needed more answers. Yeah. So it wasn't open-ended, as in like, when I think of an open-ended story, I feel like it's open-ended because it's answered most of the main questions. But there's a couple more things that, you know, if the story continued on, you'd find out more answers. But I like open-ended stories and books and stuff, as long as like the main things are answered. Even if I don't know what happens next, and I kind of like would like to know, like maybe they're pregnant and it's open-ended and they're like not sure if the baby's going to live because she has a disease or something. I don't know. And it doesn't tell us if the baby lives or not. Now it's a bit open-ended. But if the main story question was, will these two guys, people get together, then, you know, then it's answered, then I'm okay with that kind of opening. I don't know if I'm answering the question well.
No, you totally are. You totally are. Yeah. Yeah. And I love I'm telling you, every critique that you said, I'm like, yeah, I like agree. I'm like, that's true. Oh, before I don't want to forget, I wrote their name down. Actually, you brought something up about the commander, which is actually, when it comes to the commander and their kind of contribution to the story, I felt like we still didn't really understand what the connection was to that character. It was just like I hate you so much, I want to be with you type of thing. I don't know. It was weird. I didn't understand that.
I understood what the commander's connection was.
Okay.
So the commander was just about control. And the way Dong Xin was always described is that he's very pretty like his mom. So if the commander is attracted to guys and it's all about the control, I mean, there's like certain personality types of people who will actually apply to be a police officer, or, you know, these types of positions, or a prison guard. Those are certain personality types, and they tend to want control. And there's other things that could go along with it as well. But so I understood the commander and what he felt, you know, like he had this attraction and he felt like, you know, that he could control this guy. What I didn't really understand was, why did Dongxi give in? And I think, could I have read that part differently? Because it does kind of start off as more of an SA kind of like scene, but then he kind of gives in toward the end. And so it was like, okay, not really sure why he gives in. That's the part I didn't really understand. So
yeah, that's why I felt like they're missing a connection. Like, I understand like the commander was interested in him, but they don't really establish that what's his name, Dongxian is interested in the commander. Even if they like laid a little bit of breadcrumbs in the narrative of like, I don't know, because I'm not a writer, so I'm going to say it explicitly rather than subtly. But if the character had to sit in his thoughts, or something about like being enticed by that character, but not like it being mixed with not liking him, something to kind of make the connection, I would have understand it more. But we never get any of that.
So there's that one scene where this is a celebration of his dad getting the promotion. And, and then he gets stuck, pulled into the hallway by the commander, and the commander, that's when he first tells him that he wants him. And he's very punishing, like in his, like the way he chokes him. And I'm trying to remember everything that was in that scene, but, he's very controlling in that scene. I think what you're saying, if that had come through from, because we were in Dong Xin's point of view, if it come through like, that it turned him on in some way, the way that he was being treated, then I would have understood it better later. All he was doing, but he didn't think that in that moment. All he thought was, I'm going to die. So.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree. Before I continue, because I know we're going to be wrapping up, let me just catch up on the chat. I forgot where I was. Hold on. So I'll go over here. Rave techno music. Yes, Andy. There's a lot going on in here. Yeah, you need to read this book. This book is wild. I don't know. There's just things that in this book were so wild that if any other writer had written it, I wouldn't have been like enticed by it. But yeah, the relation, it's very interesting.
I just wish it was built up. I think it needed more space. The story needs more space, to be honest.
Yeah. I will say, here's something else that I'm just gonna expose myself. There's a scene that I'm like, why does this work? And that was the fox spirit.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, if anybody in a million years has told me that I'd be reading an explicit scene between a fox spirit and a person, and that it would work, I'd be like, no.
When that scene first started, I stopped and I went back to the beginning and started again because I was having a hard time imagining it. And so what I had to do just to get through to understand how it could work, I just imagined him shape-shifting into a human form.
Yeah.
It was like, how the freak does a fox do this?
I wasn't even thinking about the mechanics of it.
I was trying to see, because I see things in my head happening, and I was like, this is not working. I had to go back, start over again, and make him a human. So
thank you, Andy, for being here for all our spoiler chats as well. Hey, you don't know till you try it.
Yeah, I mean, my first fantasy romance book, I don't have any like on-page intimacy because I had never done it before. But now my next book that's coming out has it. So
yeah. Do you feel like you got that to the place where you wanted it to be?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Fox Spirit, oh my god, I need to get the Foxy going. Yeah. Fancy writing much creativity with Foxy and Human getting on.
Yeah, a single fox. I mean, I think he had 9 tails by the time
all these tails.
All these tails. I mean, Kitsunis have 9 tails, but at one point he had like 100 tails or something. And I'm like, how the freak does this work? Unless like each tail could do something, So
I think I was just caught up in the emotion of it. I was like, yeah, this really works. Anyway, so yeah, I can't believe I never in a million years would I think I'd be saying that. But with that said, we've caught up with the ending. I just wanted to say, oh yeah, just to reiterate, I guess my critiques. I just felt like I was dipping in and out of interest with this fox spirit storyline, and I don't know what it is. It just felt like it was moving to. I don't know if it was. I don't know. I don't think it was moving too slow. I just felt like maybe there wasn't enough development or getting to where there's too much like time set in like a mystery section. I feel like they need to get past that to build a relationship in there, and that didn't really happen.
I agree.
And that kind of didn't work. And my other one is hold on. Okay. So and they did that in close succession thing again within like these quick chapters. And so in succession, Dong Xian and the Emperor, and then River and Joey, and then the Fox Spirit and the other character, Hixin, Hixin, have explicit scenes, but Dong Xian has a line, and it's, I'm gonna quote it. It goes, "I buried my face into his neck as we moved into anxious rhythm." Ancient. I'm sorry, I spelled that wrong. Ancient rhythm between men, and I thought that was a beautiful line And that was like the oldest timeline that he said that. I wish that line hadn't been said there. I wish the author had actually placed that with River and Joey in the present time.
There was a similar line to it.
Oh,
so
really?
they didn't say about the ancient rhythm of men, and it wasn't during a sexual intimacy. I think it was his last hug, their last hug. And he put his head into his shoulder the same way as he did in that scene. And he smelled him.
You caught it. You got it. I just wanted them, when they had like their, you know, sex for the first time, I just wanted them to be the one to say that, to kind of like thread that who they are is like just as natural as everyone else, and they've always existed, you know? Because I kind of felt like that's what the author was, the point was driving home that point. And so I just thought it was a beautiful line, but I just wished it was placed a little bit differently. But you already made a better point.
Well, I think for me, that the first time it was said, when it said it was an ancient rhythm between men, I think I felt from that the author was just saying it's basically sex between men. So like, don't think of any other pairing. This is sex between men. But it was coming after the, you know, the shoulder, the head, you know, between, you know, laying there in the same place as in the other one. And so with not having the rest of that there and not being the sexual scene, to me, it felt like, okay, this is the break. This is where they're done. This is where they're going to go their own ways, and they won't come back together in future timelines. Again, it was kind of so in between the lines that I could be reading it wrong, but I think maybe I'm putting that in there because to me, that's what makes the ending make sense, especially when I don't know what the curse is and why do these guys keep coming back to each other, you know?
Yeah, so. No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think you made the connection beautifully, and I just hadn't made it. But yeah, no, that was so well put. And then I'll click on our last comment, Nine Tails. Okay, that's more like squid action.
Yeah. I'm actually reading a Little Mermaid retelling where the sea witch is a male, and he's using the mermaid to get something back from a palace, from the king's palace, that he can't get into the palace. Yes, their first, him and the Little Mermaid are doing things, so it's not her getting with the prince, even though she's trying to win the prince's favor because she thinks he's beautiful. And their first sexual encounter was him using all of his tentacles. And so I was like, that when I was reading the 9 tail scene, I was like, huh, what are the tails doing? Are they doing like what he was doing with his tentacles? But it wasn't quite the same, but yeah.
Like, what are the mechanics behind this?
Yeah. Oh, and that's why I just started over again and just envisioned him as a human.
Yeah. You're like, I could work this. I know how this works. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. This has been absolutely lovely. It was a wild book to read. Yes. That I was not expecting. So thank you for going on this journey with me. Do you have anything coming up like soon this week on your channel that you wanted to?
Well, the biggest thing is that on Friday, we have our first live stream for the AuthorTube Writing Conference of 2025. It's announcements of, you know, here are some of the changes. We didn't change a whole lot, but we did change one major thing for the conference, but we're also announcing the dates of the conference and when applications will be opening. And of course, then it's also our vol call. You know, anybody who wants to volunteer, can't pay anybody because we don't make money, but because it's a free conference, but, you know, for anybody who wants to help out, so it'd be volunteer call. I think that's what it's volunteer call. I don't know. Margaret, she heads that up and she calls a vol call. So let her do it. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And yeah, next month I will have my Kickstarter. My Kickstarter pre-launch page is up for anyone who wants to follow. It is the second book in my Curse, or the Brides of the Dragon King series. So it's a Curse of Wings and Gems. It is a standalone, even though it's in the same series. It overlaps timeline with the first book, so you will see characters cross over. And then there's just, I was actually looking at my book and doing the revising, and I have characters pop up in the book who are, of course, in the Curse of Scales Feathers. I have characters who pop up from a novella that I wrote, The Sunstone and the Hybrid Prince, which is in the same world. And I just finished a novella this year, which is a working title, The Florist Budding Desire. And there's characters from that book, that novella, that show up in my book. And I'm like, wow, all my characters. And there's like 1,200 years spanning between all these different stories. So I was like, this is really cool. But yeah, if
I love that. I love that because I feel like almost like Easter eggs.
Yeah, they are.
That's
and you
so
don't have to read any of the books to read any of the books. I mean, they're all standalones. So, yeah. I
love it. I'm excited about that. And I absolutely love the cover. So I can't wait. next,
did
I'm
the
going to
Dragon
try
Book
by
cover.
Wednesday. I don't know if I'm going to make it in time, but I'm going to try to blast through There's Always a Seer on Basketball and Ascension by Henry Federikib. I'm not into sports, but I love this author's writing. So I'm hoping to have a short book review ready by this coming Wednesday. We'll see if I meet my goal. That's all I got going on
Have
right
you
now.
started it?
I haven't started it, but after
Oh, okay.
this is all I'm doing. Just reading.
Reading.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks again, Shannon. Everyone, enjoy your weekend.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.